There's not a single syllable of the Bible that has anything at all to say about homosexuality as a sexual orientation. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and the fit for this video is the Frank Miller Ben Grimm. There are passages in the Hebrew Bible and in the New Testament that prohibit and condemn same-sex intercourse. But anciently, they didn't have a concept of a same-sex orientation because they didn't organize their understanding of sexuality around a framework of sexual orientation. That's something we've developed only since the 19th century. Anciently, they organized their understanding of sexuality around a social hierarchy of domination with different roles and different positions in that hierarchy. And so sex was not conceptualized as an activity mutually engaged in by two equal partners. It could not be. That was inappropriate. Sex was something that a dominant, active sexual agent did to a submissive, passive sexual object. And the agency and the consent of that sexual object simply did not matter. Sexual agency only flowed downstream. So you had to be higher up on that hierarchy, acting upon someone lower down on that hierarchy. And this is why the Hebrew Bible prohibits and condemns male same-sex intercourse, because that was the person who was supposed to be at the top of that hierarchy taking a submissive lower position on that hierarchy. But they were considered to be victimized in the eyes of the authors of Leviticus. The prohibition was on the one taking the insertive role. Now, Leviticus 20 prescribes death for both partners, but it does that for all of the inappropriate sexual relationships that are listed in that chapter, even though the agency and the consent of the submissive partner in every case simply didn't matter. It wasn't about your agency or consent. It was just about the act, which was thought to generate a kind of metaphysical contaminant that would pollute the land. And if it reached a critical mass, then the land might just eject the people of Israel. And so in order to purge that contaminant from the land, you had to put to death both participants in the act, irrespective of their agency or their consent. By the time we get to Greco-Roman period Judaism, we're starting to incorporate more Greek philosophical concepts of sexual desire as one of the baser urges of the corrupt fleshly existence. And so sex is conceptualized as something that was only appropriate for the sake of procreation. But Paul didn't really care about procreation. Jesus was coming back too soon for that to matter. So Paul suggests that sex is something that's better to avoid. He wants people to be celibate, more or less asexual. But if you can't hack celibacy, he says go ahead and get married because it's better to marry than to burn with sexual desire. And so same-sex intercourse, whether male same-sex intercourse or female same-sex intercourse, is rationalized by Paul as an inappropriate expression of sexual desire run amok, because God has removed the governor on the sexual desire that we are permitted to experience. And so Paul describes same-sex intercourse as something that only happens among the Gentiles because they don't appropriately worship God. So the sexual ethic of the Bible is based on social and philosophical frameworks that are rejected today, that are entirely irrelevant and outdated. And since we reject the foundation of that sexual ethic, we should also be able to reject the products of that foundation. Unfortunately, opposition to certain kinds of sexual activity has become a central identity marker for many more conservative readers of the Bible. And so they use that identity marker to structure values and power and boundaries, even though it destroys and even ends lives. At some point, however, as we have done with so many other ideologies from the Bible that are no longer useful, we are going to jettison that one as well. It's only a matter of when enough of us decide that we are going to prioritize the lives of vulnerable and marginalized people over and against our own structuring of power and values and boundaries.